Welcome to the Kings Beat podcast, brought to you by Blue Wire, and of course, the good people at Price Picks. I am James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. Joining me today, Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. Brenden, how are you?
I'm good. Nothing special on my end, really. I'm just excited to be chatting it up with you guys.
You're excited to be alive, excited to be wearing the second different Major League Baseball team hat of the day.
I intentionally changed from the Braves hat I had earlier to a Giants hat for this recording.
Disloyal son of a... All right. Also joining us today, Fox 40's Sean Cunningham. How are you, Sean?
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah,
How's
I'm
it
good.
going?
I mixed things up and threw you all off. I don't like
it. Did.
Hey,
I like when we go to Brenden and it's always like, no, nothing much. Like can't let us in at all. Nothing, just nothing.
Come on,
what did you
Brenden.
do?
If there was anything, I don't have.
Did you do? What? It was an off day yesterday. What'd you do?
I
take your time. For fuck's
went
sake,
into the station. I didn't really have an off day. I went into the station, did some radio stuff, did some writing, and hung out at home and watched some basketball.
Okay.
Very uneventful, Sean. I promise. If anything happened, I would share with the class.
I hope so.
We went and saw Ghostbusters last night.
How was it?
I thought it was good.
Oh, your voice went up. It
wasn't off the charts. It was fun. It was entertaining for an hour and 47 minutes or whatever it was. I find it weird that they do like, it used to be just like so many movie previews. Now it's like they're doing a bunch of commercials before a movie. Like, what is this? This is trash.
We got there pretty early then, yeah?
A little bit early, but not that bad. Yeah. We made the mistake of like, go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
We made the mistake of signing up for like the monthly pass at the movie theater. And then there's no way to stop it. Well, yeah. So it's not that bad. I mean, it's like $21 a month, but 3 of us have it. So it's like $60 something a month. The problem is that there's no way to stop it. Like you have to,
there's no way to stop it.
You have to like find some you have to find some mystical phone number and call and cancel via phone, which I can't find a number anywhere. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. So anyway, we have like
when I see you tomorrow at the game, we'll cancel this for you. I'll take care of you.
All right, there it is. But now there are movies coming out, Sean. So maybe I don't want to cancel. Maybe I don't want to. Maybe we need to cancel in like July. I don't know.
There's some good movies out. I thought about going seeing Ghost. I thought about doing something last night. I did do something last night, but like I had several movies on my radar. But after I went out, I decided to come back home, and I really got into second season of Full Swing on Netflix, which I know people are impressed with. But it's a lot of fun.
Okay,
a lot of golf.
I'm not down. Brenden, you're quiet over there.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't my forte. I have some specialties. I wouldn't say movies are necessarily it.
Or baseball teams.
Yeah, what's your specialty then? What specialty?
We're just gonna go like basketball, maybe some video games.
Basketball.
Yeah.
And
that's about all we got.
Hard stop.
Gotcha.
Pretty much.
What's your video game? NBA 2K?
I did just get the new MLB game, actually, and that's what I've been playing. I'm currently a AAA center fielder. Don't want to worry anybody, but the San Antonio missions are on the up.
Oh, all right.
Say
okay. There's a joke there, but I'll leave it alone. Do you make your guy 99 like in every attribute?
No. I told you I'm on AAA. I'm slowly working my way up. I honestly am horrible at the game. I haven't played one of these in a long time, and working my way up.
Was the
Coyote Trout is his name?
Was what?
What's his name?
Coyote Trout. He's the extended family of
Mike Trout.
Thank you. I knew I lost the first name for a
his
sec.
name's Coyote, huh? Like is it Wiley?
No.
Okay.
No.
How come his name isn't Brenden Nunes?
I don't like to do that. That's boring.
Solid question.
I've never done that in games.
The announcer will actually say your name. It's not
but you have to like. No. They only have like certain presets that they'll actually say. So I always look through the presets to make up my decision. And
once see if there is a
Coyote, I was like, well, there's Coyote. No, I don't like my own name when it comes to
Coyote. Is much more common than Brenden.
No, way better name for a baseball player.
We have squandered the first 5 minutes of this podcast talking about nothing. Like, you're welcome, everybody. Okay, let's jump into a couple of things. Number one, of course, we are brought to you by Prize Picks. If you haven't signed up already, jump on board with Prize Picks, download the app, use the code KINGSBEAT, all one word, which gets you a matching up to $100 if you're a first-time user. All kinds of good stuff on Prize Picks. We've been playing nonstop. I've been kind of on a dry spell. I have not been playing that well. I probably still should cut back from doing 6 picks every single time. But I am having a good time doing it and getting frustrated, or at least watching other people around me get really frustrated and start to melt down in the middle of Kings games. To me, it's humorous. I'm just having a good time doing it. Sometimes I look back at Brenden and flip him off, things like
I
that.
don't think that has anything to do with Prize Picks. Yeah.
Well,
From
sometimes it does. Sometimes it does.
Yeah.
So, so jump on board with Prize Picks. It's a lot of fun. There's all kinds of NCAA stuff. There's all kinds of ladies NCAA that you can get involved with right now, especially with the we're in the Sweet 16. I have not been watching all day. It's been kind of a wild day for us here with radio shows and Kings coverage. Let's jump into that. We were all at practice a few minutes ago, and Sasha Vezenkov came over and talked to us. What were your guys' takeaways from Sasha? And it sure doesn't seem like he's ready to play anytime soon.
Nope. That was my biggest takeaway. Is he ain't ready. He ain't there yet. And could be a confidence thing. Could be just a pain tolerance thing. Could be any number of things. It's just I don't think that there's really any rush. But don't feel like he's knocking on the door of playing.
Brenden, what were your thoughts?
I mean, it definitely stood out that he said this is the longest he's been out with an injury in his career. He's 28. He spent a long time professional overseas, and just him really emphasizing how much it being a re-injury is playing a factor here. Earlier in the year, injured that right ankle. And then once he came back from that, injured his left. And then now the most recent thing that's the grade 3 that's kept him out the extended time most recently has been that right ankle once again. And he said that that's kind of been, another reason for an extra layer of precaution, really, is that this is already a re-injury.
Yeah, I think he had injured it like 2 weeks before and then didn't heal up all the way, came back too soon, rolled his left ankle in practice, I think, like you said. And then, he rolled his left ankle in the game, which was the other ankle. And then when he came back to practice a couple of days later, he rolled his right ankle and did it in really bad, which was a grade 3. I think I kind of felt the same way, like a mixture of both of you guys. Like, first of all, he mentally might not be ready. As much as it is physical, he did bring up that, like, look, it's tough. They don't have practice right now. The Kings just played 5 games in 7 nights, and I think it was actually 6 and 8 nights, something like that. Maybe it was with a day of travel. But there is no practice when you're playing back-to-backs, and the Kings have been stuck perpetually in this series of back-to-backs and can't get out of it. And for Sasha to like how are you supposed to build confidence in your body and get back out on the court if there's no way to actually do it, to actually go out and play? So I wish the G League was used in a better way where we could have something like a rehab assignment, but it's just kind of not the way it's used for 28-year-old players.
I also to that point, James, I also read him a little, and I wish we had a little bit more time with him, and I'll certainly follow up. But I feel like if it were up to him, he'd be playing. I feel like they're probably bringing him along a little bit more cautiously. And, I don't know if many people know this. I would imagine they do, but maybe the average fan doesn't, is these guys all have wearable technology that gives their body readings. And I mean, they're poked and prodded. And we've talked about before, when they come off even before the games, they come off the practice court, they've got a jumping pad that they've got to launch themselves off of. And, this is a little speculation on my part, but I would guess his readings aren't what they normally are. And that's paired with him obviously having re-injuring the ankle. I think there's a err on the side of caution right now. But I think with him, as he talked about being the longest he's been out, I just got this impression from him that if it was up to him, he'd be playing today. But we'll
maybe,
maybe.
Yeah. I think it's interesting too. Like the Kings have all kinds of biometric testing, and
Right.
like they really do all kinds of crazy stuff that you wouldn't think of. So, like they have almost like when you're in geometry class and the teacher had like it's almost like a big V, and on one end is a piece of chalk, and on the other end is like an eraser, and they can put the eraser in. It's like a big compass, and they can basically draw a circle with a piece of chalk, like a bigger compass. They have that. They have basically the equivalent of those for a leg, for a knee, for a ankle bend, and they test these guys all the time to see if they're losing range of motion in their ankles or knees or hips. They're checking them all the time. So where this comes in is they have a baseline for every player. And I'm going to guess that his baseline, he's still way off his baseline with sort of mobility in the ankle. Or I think we probably would start to see more of him out there. We were able to see Trey Lyles bouncing around a little bit on the court.
Can I ask you real quick about the Sasha thing? Because, I couldn't hear him great and I still have to listen back to my video, but I didn't, I guess, get quite the same impression as you guys. And I'm curious kind of where you guys were reading that he doesn't seem quite to be ready. Like I felt like we got a lot of the typical PR answers of, until I know, kind of playing it day by day. And I'm just curious where you guys got that read from, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was pretty clear that mentally, part of coming back is also just, he said it, like being mentally ready, and not just physically. Like there's something to being physically ready, but until you're comfortable and you don't think you're going to roll the ankle again, there's sort of like that bridge you have to get past. And again, the only way to do that is to get out on the court and run and test that thing and play. And since he's not able to do that on the practice court, I think that's part of where I got that. Sean, what were you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just the frustration. You could kind of see it on his face, and that's why I want to follow up with him. And we didn't get enough time, but he used a lot of keywords there that were like, "Yeah, this is the longest I've been out with an ankle injury," things like that. Obviously, I think that the medical teams here in the States are a little bit better than what they do in Europe, in terms of, as James kind of laid out there, was a lot of the biometric stuff. I think he's not used to a lot of those types of processes. And obviously you're playing a lot of games and you don't have, as James mentioned, enough practice times. He's been able to practice for better part of 2 weeks now almost. And so, he has been questionable. It's all about whether or not it's like, well, can he make strides enough? Maybe they're waiting on some reading from him. Maybe they're waiting to see if he can match certain readings that he would have earlier on. And I just think, in his mind, just after talking to him from previous conversations, that if he feels he can practice, he feels he can play. So it's something I'd like to follow up with him for sure.
Yeah, he hasn't been around in the locker room all that much either, which typically he is. He's around all the time. If there is one player who's in the locker room almost every single night in pregame, it's Sasha. And maybe for the last couple of weeks, he hasn't. Since the injury, he's been around less and less. Like I had checked in with him a couple of times. And, part of this is like, look, he's not, we always try to compare people to like De'Aaron Fox when he had a grade 3 ankle sprain when he was young. And what was he, like 21 when he did that? And he was, out of a boot in like 3 days and like walking around with no problems, like 4 days. And then all of a sudden he was back on the court in 7 weeks. Like that's a 21-year-old fast healer. Like Sasha's 28 years old. Like those ankles have like a ton of mileage on them. He's played a ton of basketball since the time he's like 15 all the way until, the time he signs with the Kings. So like he just might not be healing all that fast. And that's, he's still well within the range of, like the 20 to 30 games missed for an ankle sprain of this magnitude. But he did tell me like, hey, we're just kind of waiting for the ligament to reattach, because it's a grade 3. He snapped the ligament in his ankle, and the thing's got to reattach, scar tissue over, heal up, and then you start to build range of motion and everything else. So this was a pretty catastrophic injury for an NBA player. That's and so we'll have to see how he responds when he is on the court. Let's get to the Trey Lyles stuff. Trey Lyles was back on the court. Again, I didn't get any word. I don't know if Sean did. Brenden and I were discussing this before we popped on. I didn't have time today to go over and ask, but Sean, have you heard anything about Trey's recovery from his MCL sprain?
No, just progressing. I mean, he's gone from shooting flat-footed, jumpers to actually being able to move laterally. And today they were working a lot on half-court offense and defense and lateral quickness and stuff like that. So that is a hugely encouraging sign. It still looks to me like he's probably at least a week or more away, but definitely encouraging signs to see him out there going through basketball motions as opposed to coming out there standing flat-footed and getting up some jumpers. And not sure when it began for him because they hadn't really had many practice availabilities coming off the road trip. So this is something that maybe they had begun maybe in the day before the Orlando game, who knows, but yeah, it'll be interesting to talk to him sometime in the coming days or weeks ahead.
Yeah, when we got out there, he had a compression sleeve on that left leg and was kind of taking something off his knee. It looked like it was ice or whatever he kind of had on that knee, and then ends up playing 3-on-3 with a handful of the coaches. And by the way, some of these coaches can still definitely play ball.
Stop.
Let me tell you, they can, Sean. They can.
The hammer, you saw the hammer.
Yeah, Dolkeys, right?
Oh no, one of the other guys, which I his name is slipping by, but one guy got up and just dunked all over everybody.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's, definitely progress. Like Sean said, I think last time that at least I had seen him at a practice, he was shooting flat-footed. So definitely seems to be some progress. But no, I haven't heard anything official either on sort of update on these guys. Okay.
Yeah. And we kind of have a little bit of something to go with when it comes to Trey, because Trey had the, calf strain early in the season. And we watched him progress from that, which is an unusual thing to see, where they were letting him, I don't think Trey participated fully in practice today, but then after practice, he was going like pretty hard in 3-on-3. We saw this progression early in the season. You guys remember, we saw him flat-footed, then we saw him running, and then all of a sudden we saw him doing some 3-on-3 work. And the 3-on-3 work usually means he's getting relatively close. But I was a little caught off guard by the gigantic ice bag he had on his knee when we showed up today. And Sean has so if any of you haven't seen what happened to him, Sean had a perfect video and captured it in the game against Milwaukee, right? Yeah. It was Brook Lopez. He was in the air and Brook Lopez took a step, and Trey's leg hit one of Brook Lopez's legs, and you could see his knee just tweak just a little bit in the air. So it was like a swinging leg. They got hit in mid swing and kind of buckled the knee a little bit, which is where he got the MCL sprain. Yeah. So hopefully he's back. The Kings miss Trey Lyles a ton.
Sure do.
I don't know what's going to happen with Sasha, how much he's going to play down the stretch, if at all. And I think, unfortunately for Sasha, he's missing this golden opportunity while Trey is out, where he could have earned his way into the rotation. But just where are you guys at with that aspect of this? Because I keep running into these games where I'm thinking he's like the 7th or 8th man in your rotation, but my goodness, they miss him horribly.
I think the size is where it stands out. A lot of these 3-guard lineups, I have liked what I've seen more often than not, I think. But, Mike Brown said in one of the recent pre-games that they really only have 2 4s on the team, and both of them are out right now. The HB and Keegan can fill that spot, but really these are your more traditional 4s, and they play more positionless basketball, so you're definitely able to get away with it. But I think also the versatility that they provide of both those guys can fill that small ball five. Obviously, we've seen Trey do it. We've seen him play with Sasha in that position a little bit there as well. But I think giving you some optionality in that position, and Trey still did have some inconsistencies, but I felt like he was pretty locked into being that seventh guy, and the Kings could use some of that depth down the stretch here.
Yeah, not really more to add on that, other than I think there's some people that got a little encouragement seeing his Instagram story. He's in street clothes. He put a little emoji over his face and had tick tick. I mean, on there, I think he's acknowledging the fact that he's making strides and making progress, and the next step is to see him in practice with the team, and hopefully everything goes well in that regard. But you can just watch these games and see where he's I don't want to take away for how well this team has been playing, even though they had a 36-point loss to the Mavericks. But this team is really playing pretty well right now as a cohesive unit. There's a lot more consistent effort on defense, and for the things that they're doing well and things responding to physicality well, these are things that Trey Lyles gives them a big boost in. So without him being in the lineup, and to see them make strides is encouraging. But my goodness, you'd love to see what it looks like with him in the rotation.
Yeah, I mean, there's like clearly a gaping hole missing in the rotation right now. That's every time I'm watching, I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
Alex Len has been playing out of his mind. Alex Len's minutes have been great lately, but how would Alex Len look with a bigger power forward next to him? How would Domas look for stretches with a bigger, player next to him, where all of a sudden you can't send 2 and 3 guys at Domas the whole time because you can't, number one, you can't leave Trey, but also Trey can bust you up inside, and you can also pull Domas away from the basket while Trey goes down inside. It just like his versatility is sorely missed on this team. And, again, they missed him early in the season. And now this stretch here has been a little brutal. Like, I don't know how much of a difference Trey Lyles makes in a game like the loss to Dallas the other night, but certainly I think it's still like one of those things where you'd like to see the team whole and like moving forward together. We have no update on Kevin Huerter. At least I have no update on Kevin Huerter. I don't know if you guys have heard anything on Kevin Huerter.
No, a little bit, but nothing really firm to go with. I think it's interesting that we're still figuring out maybe what treatment options could be. I think there's you get second, third opinions. But ultimately, I would be shocked if Kevin Huerter plays again, at least in the regular season. Now, who knows what, playoff time looks like. I would expect him to have surgery. I would expect him to get it repaired and do it the right way. But I'm not Kevin Huerter. So to me, it would very much surprise me to see him play again.
I guess my question to you guys about that would be, is the fact that there's contemplating for this long. I feel like that in itself makes me lean towards what Sean's saying, that, unlikely to see him again, right?
Okay.
Well, no, because honestly, I mean, you get your second, third opinions. You see what a week looks like. You see how the shoulder responds. You see if he can go through any type of basketball activity, even in the immediate future, even if they're saying, it's up to you, it's your call. And again, this is all speculation, but I don't think it's a bad sign that here you are on March 28th, but I still, regardless of whether they did it in a week or here we are at March 28th, I just don't. I would still be very surprised if that's the path that they took. I would think you'd want to get it completely just fixed right away and begin your process of rehabilitation.
Yeah. Okay. So we had, man, I'm not going to be able to come up with his name. On the Insiders, me and Kyle had a doctor come in and actually explain sort of the path here and what it means for Kevin. So the surgery options. So there are 2 major types of injuries that you can do to your rotator cuff. To your shoulder, like what's happened here, the labrum. The labrum is basically like this little weird cup that sits in your shoulder that basically acts as like where the ball of your upper arm goes into the socket and moves around. And it's sort of this little layer that's on the inside. When baseball players get what's called a slap tear, it's usually because the bicep tendon runs up into the shoulder, and eventually, after so many years of use, it starts to like pull away, and you get small tears in the top of the labrum. What Kevin did was a full dislocation, and when the dislocation happens, it's literally like it just took. It popped, his shoulder popped out, and it took part of the labrum with it and ripped the labrum off the bottom section. So there's a possibility that it like can heal back up and it can scar over. But realistically, Kevin Huerter is now going to have an issue that at any time he could pop his shoulder out of the socket. And it's not a good thing. So it depends on the grade of tear that he had, and we don't know any of this. That's the problem at this point. We have very little to go by just because the Kings haven't released any information on what's going on with him. And Kevin hasn't been around for us to talk to him. But if he has surgery, he's out 4 to 6 months. If he doesn't have surgery, typical is like 4 to 5 weeks before you're, sort of back up to full strength, because you don't just have to like have everything cool down and stop being all inflamed and crazy, but then you have to start rebuilding the strength in the shoulder and sort of the mobility of the shoulder. So like the 4 to 5 weeks might make him available for the playoffs, but surgery would clearly put him deep into the summer. He would be ready for next season, but deep into the summer before he would be able to do anything.
Yeah, and I mean, I appreciate all that stuff, but it's also super premature because there's so much we don't know. You know what I mean? It's like you're talking about somebody who maybe by the definition of whatever, but there's a lot we don't know. And
well, no, but we do know that there's a labral tear.
Correct.
Yeah.
But I'm also just don't feel comfortable in saying that like putting timetables like that on there. That is what's wrong with his injury.
Oh no, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. So, and I just found him, Dr. Nirav Pandya from, oh man, where is he? He is a professor at UCSF orthopedic surgery, and he's also the director of sports medicine for the Benioff Children's Hospital in the Bay Area. Yeah, I'm not saying Kevin's going to be back in 4 to 5 weeks. I'm saying that that's the standard time frame if you don't do surgery. And Kevin could have a setback at any time, because if the tear is substantial enough that he continues to have dislocations, he's starting over again. And so that's where you kind of have this gray area, whether it's surgery or it's waiting to see if it heals up. And then it's always possible that he never has a problem with the shoulder again, but probably unlikely, because I think if we remember back, Chris Webber had these issues when he played for the Wizards years ago. He had pulled for the Bullets, he had dislocated his shoulder dunking, and then had repeated dislocations after the fact. And I think eventually had to have surgery to repair. So he wouldn't be at all potentially available at least in a month, 6 weeks out, if at all. And then surgery would be much longer. How much do you think they miss Kevin? I don't know, Brenden, let's start with you.
I've been wondering that recently. It's really crossed my mind these last few games, kind of looking at, the Kings have picked up their defense. Prior to that Dallas game, they'd won 6 of 8, and I think it really had been on the back of their defense. And even in that Dallas loss, they do get their butts kicked by 36. Mike Brown comes out after the game and points towards the offense, actually, rather than the defense. And part of that is 21 points off turnovers. I believe it's 18 fast break points for the Mavs. So, little things that he felt like offensively leaked over into the defense. But I think while there's been defensive improvement, they've slowed down a little bit offensively. Like you look at the last 4 games, 96 points, 108, 109, 102. That's not typical Sacramento Kings production. And I think that while Keon has been a good 3-point shooter, I still think he's not defended anywhere close to the same way that Kevin Huerter was. And I think that messes with the spacing a little bit in Sacramento's offense, or at least has an effect there. and the cutting that Kevin provide. When he's moving off ball, I think that the pace that he provides, not only in the full court, but in the half court, is really, really big for this team. So there's moments out there where, Keon looks a little confused in where he's supposed to be in the offense, which I think is typical for the amount of experience that he has. But Kevin was on point in that aspect. So while there's definitely been defensive growth, I do wonder how much of the offensive slowing down a little bit as of late, albeit small sample size, like 4 games or so, has to do with Kevin not being out there.
No, it's well said. I mean, Kevin, especially given his struggles, I think it's easy for an average fan or even someone who wants to be cynical and say, well, they don't miss him because he's really been going through it and having his struggles. And you can even look in recent games. I think there was only, of his last like 10 games, there might have been only 2 that even took double-digit shots. Obviously, the scoring really hasn't been there, but Brenden just outlined or just laid out ways that have absolutely him impacting the offensive end. The pace for sure, cutting is huge, and he's a bucket. You have to, the defense has to respect. Even if he has been struggling for a greater part of the season, you can see where he's missed. I think it's pretty obvious. Now, that being said, they do play a different brand of basketball right now. And one of the reasons you can argue that it's working is because of what's happening defensively, but also there's just not a lot of tape yet on this type of style of basketball, this brand of basketball that the Kings have been playing. So interesting to see what tape does and see what scouting does and how that impacts things going the rest of the way. But at the end of the day, you still see some characteristics that are very flawed with this team that you're not going to be able to shake. So while there is some encouraging signs, and I would say absolutely Kevin Huerter has missed. I mean, guys, this is a guy who just a year ago started off shooting over 50% from the perimeter, helped this team gain to 3rd in the West. So, if they're going to need a Kevin Huerter at his best and at least being the type of player he's shown to be. But that being said, he has struggled immensely. So I've argued that, this could be the right thing for him to totally mentally, it puts his focus on a different thing, and that's rehabbing the shoulder and getting better and getting back to yourself without going out there and constantly, trying to work your way, just shoot your way through struggles and continue to play the same thing. And this kind of refocuses him and it gives him a reset button in a way.
Yeah. Okay. So I think there's some things that are kind of strange that happen with this team. So first of all, Kevin got hurt in the Memphis game. It was early in the Memphis game. They score 121 points in that game, but we can all acknowledge that the Grizzlies are horrible. They go to Toronto, and I think we can also acknowledge that whatever that was, that Toronto Raptors team that they played, it wasn't good at all either. I mean, just a bad version of the Raptors. And the Kings dropped 123 and beat them 123 to 89. The next 4 games, the Kings scored 102, 109, 108, and 96. And this team, there's this weird stat that when they score 120 or more, they are 35-4 on the season. So this team, the best version of this team, at least that we've seen this season, is for them to score 120. And whether Kevin Huerter is hitting his shots or not, to Brendan's point, he's a better offensive player than Keon Ellis because he's respected in a way that Keon hasn't earned yet in the league. And so the gravity that of Kevin coming off the high DHO and taking his defender way away from Domantas Sabonis at the top, it opens up everything for the Kings. And it's just something that no team is gonna chase Keon Ellis right now doing that move at all.
Right.
And so it's kind of on, to be honest with you, it's on Keegan, which is kind of weird, but it's on Keegan to continue to grow and to continue to be that player that does that move and allow Keon to go sit in the corner and hit the open 3 because Keon's been really good shooting the ball. So I don't want to take away from what Keon's done. Defensively, he's been spectacular. I think he's changed the whole dynamic with this team. Not only are we not seeing a jailbreak guys running at Domas all game long, but we're getting to see De'Aaron Fox not have to play defense the entire game, and on the best offensive player. Sometimes he is, but I also think having Keon there has really taken a lot of pressure
I think the three of them, Fox, Keon, and Davion Mitchell have been a sensational, and I say sensational because of what they've been able to do in a small sample size, but it shows what this team can do defensively to some teams. I don't know if they can do it to every team, but it's definitely, you get your three best defenders out there, especially with Keegan Murray, and you can have some good things going. But those guards have been working their asses off on the defensive end.
Yeah,
and you get to show other guards different looks. It's like, you don't want, no matter how good of a defender you are, if you're just, that's the guy you have stuck on the star player all night, at some point he's going to figure something out. And so just to be able to switch it up, to throw Chris Duarte in there for 3 minutes to give Luka a different look, having all these different options, I think is really valuable.
Yeah, I don't think it worked versus the Mavs for whatever reason. Like, defensively, the Kings couldn't figure out what they were doing, which I thought was very strange that they couldn't. But you could see how it worked. It worked against Maxey, throwing different looks at him. It worked against Orlando. It worked against the Grizzlies. Like, there are teams that this actually, even the Raptors, where like all the different looks you can give somebody. Like, I think it's interesting. It really, you can just keep sending different looks at some of these players, and hopefully you can find some sort of, something that works. I'd also say, like, look, people, like, to Sean's point, Kevin Huerter is a good basketball player. He has not had a good season, but he is a good. I mean, he was the third leading scorer on this team last year when they won 48 games, and he was a big reason why they were so good last year. He just is, like, what we can see with him going out and Ellis coming in is that Keon's a better fit, and you can see how this team needs one more or two more of these types of players, but just at different positions. They need the 3 and the 4 version of Keon Ellis to go with, Fox, Monk, Sabonis, and Keegan Murray, at least in my opinion.
Well, and I like that you brought up, even the Philly game, because there was something that happened that was kind of odd in that back-to-back with Philly and Dallas, is that Tyrese Maxey in the first half goes off for 26 points, finishes with 29. Luka Doncic goes off for 26 points in the first half, finishes with 28. Kings win the game over the Sixers. So they are making adjustments. I mean, certainly the stars are still going out there and, they're going to get theirs, but I think the Kings have done a really good job at limiting kind of those other guys for them. And I would take that across the road trip and probably over really their last 10 games or so. I think they've shown some things defensively that have been promising, especially when it comes to physicality. But at the end of the day, they're still having guys go out there and have some pretty big games. But the adjustments in game have been there a lot. I think the only thing that stands out as the anomaly in that game against the Mavericks is Luka really didn't need to do anything in the third quarter when they got hot, and it was all Kyrie Irving and seeing him get hot, and then by the time they got to the fourth quarter, that game was over.
Yeah, I think it's also it's interesting the way that, I mean, that game unfolded. But to go back to the Philadelphia game, like, there was that point in the first quarter where Maxey had 21 points and Keegan Murray had 17, and the score, I believe, was 25-21. And I looked at you, Sean. I'm like,
that's wild, because Maxey had the first 16 points for Philly.
And then Paul Reed had like 2 buckets, and then that was it. Yeah. To me, that was like totally bizarre what was happening. And then Luka did get in foul trouble. I mean, Luka would have came back in the game and probably wouldn't have picked up another foul because probably wouldn't have happened. But when it comes to the Mavs, which the Kings are going to play again on Friday night, which is probably the most important game of the season. Well, I'll just say it is the most important game of the season to date. But they have 2 of the greatest shot makers in the league. And I don't particularly enjoy watching Luka Doncic play basketball. I just don't. Why? I hate how he's just bitches at the officials the entire, incessantly. Like, watching him live is dreadful. Like, he doesn't. Well, it's the same with Draymond. Like, you watch him and it's just like, man, just shut up and play the game, dude. Like, you're getting all kinds of calls. Just shut up and play, right? You're too good to do that. So I don't enjoy watching him play, but I'm not going to say that he's not one of the greatest shot makers I've ever seen. Like, it's incredible how he makes like crazy shots where you're like, oh, that's not going in, and then it's nothing but net. You're like, oh, that's wild. And then when Kyrie gets hot, Kyrie doesn't even like tickle the twine. I mean, the thing's going right through the net. It's not even doing anything. There's no movement in the net when he gets hot. So anyway, it's going to be difficult. Brendan's like,
he does not co-sign to that either.
The Luka thing, we talked about this yesterday too. I do very much enjoy Luka, but I get the frustrations. I do want to backtrack a little bit. Like you mentioned, Kevin being out puts some more responsibility on Keegan, and I think that's true. I think the same is also for Malik, though. And Malik's had a tough last 3 games. 0 points in Orlando, 0 of 11 from the field. He tweeted that he couldn't hit anything after the fact, and they still win that game. But a lot of it has to do with getting production from Keon Ellis. Keon Ellis has 19 points in that game. And then the game against Philly, Malik has 11 points. Not great, but you had a big night from Davion Mitchell that let you get away with it, where Davion has 18 in that game. And then most recently against Dallas, another tough game for Malik where he has 10. You're not able to pull it out because none of those other guys necessarily had big moments either. De'Aaron has his struggles as well. So I do think it puts more responsibility on some of these guys. And Malik's been great all year long. Well, I do think that there are still some inconsistencies that exist with his play, and it's harder to survive those now.
Yeah, I would agree. I'd also say, like, the Kings have kind of hit a wall, and, a little bit as a team. You can see Malik's numbers. You can look at De'Aaron shooting numbers. Even Domantas Sabonis over his last 4 games is averaging like 14 points a game. They just feel like they've kind of run up against it. And like, I'm not here to make excuses about why that is. I will tell you that they had what we talked about, 5 games in 7 nights. And I think it's 6 games in 8 nights, which is, or maybe it's 9 nights, but they were also like, it's wild to look at. It's in Sacramento against Memphis, then flying to Toronto, which is 3,000 miles away. The next night playing in Washington, D.C., the next 2 days later playing in Orlando, and then flying back to Sacramento. So it's not just like 5 games in 7 nights or 6 and 8. It's that you start on one side of the country, you go to the other, you make like 2 stops on the East Coast, fly back, and then have another back-to-back. And so I get the exhaustion level of this team, but this little 2-day break they had today and yesterday, this is it. That's the last time they have 2 days off together in the rest of the season. And they have so many games over such a short amount of time that kind of is what it is. Either you recovered and you're ready to go, or you're not. And so I'm not sure what to make of that, but it sure does seem like they're in a little bit of a pickle here when it comes to just flat out exhaustion. And part of it's because they don't have guys like Trey, Lyles, and Sasha Vezenkov to eat up some of these minutes, or even Kevin Huerter. But also some of it's just straight up that the NBA schedule is brutal.
Yeah, it's that way for everybody. That's why it's why it's a competitive schedule. It's why there's it's why there's teams that lose. I mean, it's just I don't know. I don't really. Yes, you can acknowledge fatigue. You can acknowledge that this team has played hard. It's why people really shouldn't freak out over a 36-point loss to a team that you are fighting so hard to beat. Because again, you had won 7 of 10 coming into that game. And I know they had dropped the game to Washington, and we've talked about that a lot. You've dropped those games to those bad teams, but that's why, again, bird's eye view of this team, they're just fine, really. I mean, they're playing well. They're you can talk about maybe the scoring a little bit here and there, and maybe getting back to trying to pick up the pace a little bit. But if you try to explore the why and the schedule, and there are reasons for it, and I think James did a good job of laying that out. I keep saying outlining and laying that out. I don't understand why I keep saying that, so.
It's like 3 times.
but to that point though, it's like, this is the same for everybody. And even Mike Brown today says it's unfortunate we got to play a team that we're right there within the standings like Dallas, but you also took care of business early in the year to where at worst case, you're splitting the season series with them. Granted, you need to treat, in my opinion, you need to treat Friday as a must-win scenario. But I think because of the fact you have 2 shots at winning the series and taking the tiebreaker is the whole reason as to why you saw a let-up game in that very first game. So the response for Friday will be interesting to see, because typically when this team gives a damn about and plays to the level of their opposition, good things happen for them.
Yeah, and I would go ahead, Brenden.
I think we have our first real must-win game of the season. And Mike Brown said at practice today, pretty much every game now is must-win. But I think there's going to be a handful, obviously, as we get down the stretch. I think they still play Phoenix. They still play New Orleans. They play the Clippers one more time, I believe. And I think there might be an OKC game in there as well. There is a lot of Western Conference opponents still coming up, but where Dallas is sitting at 6, Kings a game behind them in 8 now, with Phoenix matched there in the middle as well, not just for standings, but winning that tiebreaker is big. What does it go to after the head-to-head?
I think it goes to division record and then conference record. If you're in the same division, then it goes division record. If you're not, then it just goes to conference record. And they're right there with each other too.
They are 27-19 for Dallas and 27-18 for Sacramento.
Yeah, they're like almost identical. So like the tiebreaker, we keep acting like if the Kings lose, they lose a tiebreaker. No, they would literally be tied. The problem is the game's lost at that point. You're going to be scrambling to try to get back to Dallas. And Dallas doesn't have a particularly difficult schedule where, like you talked about the Kings schedule, which, again, you mentioned all those teams that they have to play. They also have to play the Knicks and the Celtics on a back-to-back. So that's trouble. They have the Nets, which is a one easy game. And then they have the Blazers last game of the season, which is the second one. Outside of that, the other 8 games are like just pretty ridiculously tough. But the Suns have the most horrific schedule I've ever seen. They have a 647 win percentage against in the final 10 games. So their strength of schedule is by far the most difficult in the league. And, if you look at Tankathon and they show strength of schedule, they show like all your difficult games and all your easy games remaining. The Suns have 0 remaining easy games. They have like
you want me to rattle them off?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, because this is wild. Wild. Thunder, at Pelicans. Okay, so they begin that on Friday. So Friday at Thunder, and then Monday they have the weekend off. So Monday at Pelicans. Then they go that Wednesday home against the Cavs. Friday home against the Timberwolves. Sunday home against the Pelicans. So second matchup with the Pelicans. Then they've got a Tuesday, Wednesday home and home. So they host the Clippers, and then they go to LA to play the Clippers again. So they've got the Clippers twice in a back-to-back scenario. Then that Friday, so that's a 4 and 5 nights, they get at Sacramento, and then they close at that Sunday at Minneapolis. Pretty wild.
They're difficult games. Okay, so they have Timberwolves twice, they have the Clippers twice, and they had one other team twice. The Pelicans twice.
Clippers, and Timberwolves. And it's crazy because they only play, if you talk about their remaining, 8 games? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9 games? They only have one Eastern Conference opponent, and that's the Cavaliers.
And their easiest game on their schedule is a Sacramento Kings team that's 12 games over 500. That's the easiest game on their schedule remaining.
Yeah.
Like it's absolutely wild. So it doesn't matter what the Suns do. I don't think that they're going to be able to hold up. And I think the interesting thing too with the Kings is, as much as we worry about, the back-to-back with the Knicks and the Celtics, like I think that the Kings will be okay in most of their games against really difficult opponents. It's the Utah Jazz, it's the Brooklyn Nets, and it's the Trailblazers that I worry about, because those are the letdown games. And this team,
you called them the easy games. You called them the easy games earlier, and I cringed.
Or they're the games that you should win if you're going to make the playoffs. They're the games. But
they don't win those games. They don't win those games, James.
No, they don't.
They play defense now. Damn it.
That's it. That's all. They play defense. All right. I'm not sure. Okay, what else were we going to discuss? The games are wild. I think it is a must-win on Friday. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you like that must-win mentality? Do you treat it as a must-win? I get Mike Brown's point. He's like, yeah, you could beat Dallas on Friday, win this tiebreaker, win the series, but then lose your next 9 games. So I mean, yes, while that's very true, you have to treat everyone that way. I get it, but there needs to be kind of a bounce back mentality on Friday night for sure, and really taking advantage of the home schedule. That I think more than anything, the Kings sometimes tend to get kind of lax at home. I think they've had moments of momentum that they can build, but by and large, they're still a pretty good team at home, and I think they really need to capitalize with that home record.
Sean, they're 21-14 at home, 21-16 on the road.
Right. I mean, it's still decent home record. Could be better, but they are what they are.
Decent home record. Yeah, that's not.
Hey, we've seen losing home records. So
no, that's true. That's true. Yeah, I don't know. It's a problem. You can't keep losing at home. You got to get better at home. I don't know what they have to do to like settle in and do something different. But for me, like their home record, this team should have pushed for 30 wins at home, at least 28 wins at home. And that's where their failing is going to be.
Even the Clippers, who are at 4th, are still 22-13 at home. So, I mean, all these Western Conference teams are hovered around the same amount if you're not in that top 3.
Yeah, the West is tough. It's tough. Okay, let's get to the business of basketball.
Okay. What? Well, at least it wasn't the ESPN one. I get it. That's fine. You were ready, though. You were absolutely ready.
I was ready. Yeah. Good thing. Sean's still, slow over there. Can't figure out what noise he's gonna make.
I think he got us covered. I don't know that I have to make
figure it out. Figure it out. Get back to me.
Wow. Every time, Brenden. Let's see. We had this weird situation with De'Aaron Fox in postgame the other night. A little bit. I don't know. He dropped some F bombs and told us, yeah, no, it's not. What were you guys' takeaways from his answer to Jason Anderson's question about sort of him coming up there and showing leadership in losses and being out there?
I think that he loves speaking with us. I think
clearly he does not love speaking with us. And like, look, I'm okay with that, Brenden. I am.
Yeah, I mean, it's just part of the job when it comes down to it from his perspective, which I think is fine. And I think that he has gone out there. I mean, I appreciate the honesty. I don't think it was like a shot at Jason or any of us or anything like that. And I don't think anybody took it that way. So I don't know. I appreciate the honesty. It didn't really catch me off guard. I was kind of laughing, to be honest, more than anything. It feels very on brand for De'Aaron.
I don't know what Jason, with respect to Jason, I like Jason a lot. I don't know what he was trying to, I mean, what did you expect him to say? And I think you were expecting him to draw this, I'm being a leader. I think he was trying to set him up for this, like,
yeah, Jason meant it as a compliment.
Somehow of a leadership tip of the cap. You're doing this more, good for you. But like, I think if you really listen to what Fox said, is that when he is asked, he will do it. And I'll just leave it at that.
And a quote.
Yep.
Yeah. And I also, like, it plays into the question that I asked earlier in the season that about like people coming out and talking. And I think that that's what Jason was getting at, that we're not just getting Keon Ellis in post game by himself after a 40-point loss. But I don't know, like my point was never a shot at De'Aaron Fox at all, or Domantas Sabonis. It was just that's just not the norm. When bad things happen, somebody who was part of the reason why bad things happen have to come out and talk to us. And that's just the job. And it's our job to ask like questions. Sometimes they're good questions. Sometimes they're stupid questions. But it's also it's their job to answer them. And I also get like De'Aaron doesn't, like, we ask a lot of the same questions night in and night out. like whether like as a group, the same similar questions are asked. And part of that is because the Kings keep winning crazy good games and then losing just the most ridiculously stupid games you've ever seen. And so you get asked the same question because it's like, hey, you just lost to another one of these games. What exactly happened in the third quarter? Right. So, I mean, sometimes we have to ask the same questions, but I didn't have any problems with it. I didn't take it personal. And I agree with him. It's not the fun part of the job. Some people love it. Like Sean and I can attest to this. Vince Carter loved the media, and it was like he was practicing for his next career and wanted to do like fireside chats with Vince, and would just like sit there and talk and talk. And then other guys don't like the media, like talking to the media at all, because things get misconstrued or whatever, and they're worried about getting themselves in trouble. I mean, we had Costa Koufis, which I love. Costa Koufis, he's a great dude, but he would only talk in cliches, and it was because he didn't want to say anything that was controversial. So yeah, just I'm going to go out there. I'm going to do my best. Going to lace them up. Going to take it one quarter at a time, and hopefully we play a whole 60 minutes of basketball. And like you just string them together, and you're like, you literally just said nothing, Costa. And then halfway through, he starts smiling because he knew he was giving you nothing.
Well, that's because he saw me laughing typically.
Oh,
like,
yeah, me too.
Shaking my head, and he'll be like, stop. He'd be like, don't, come on, stop.
Like, the one thing I will ask you guys about the De'Aaron thing is like Jason's follow-up about like, well, do you think that your teammates appreciate it at all? Like when the Keon moment happened earlier in the year, right? My perspective was more on, I feel like that's unfair to Keon, kind of like what I feel like you were saying, James. And I feel like there'd be an appreciation, or I guess if somebody else were to have taken that responsibility, I guess. But from your guys' experience, do you ever feel like there's an aspect of teammates appreciating teammates being the one to go out there?
Have you ever played Not It?
I have.
Okay. That's what
last week.
When you lose by 40, Not It. I mean,
Right.
that's it. That's what the locker room, a lot of guys don't say anything. They just grab their clothes and leave so they don't have to do it. So Is there an appreciation? Not really. Like, again.
Yeah.
Like
I mean, I think it's one of those things. It's more so of an unspoken thing. Like, I don't think anyone's losing sleep over it. It's just a bad look. You shouldn't want your guy to do that. And that's kind of what it goes back to. Mm-hmm. But again, I mean, just listen to what De'Aaron Fox said last night. Take away the expletives and just listen to what he said. And I think that speaks for itself, Yeah. And also, I just feel like they're also at a point in the season where, let's be honest, a 36-point drubbing to a team that you need to beat for your playoff standings and all that stuff carries more weight than a loss in December or January.
Yeah, and somebody needs to like step up and say, "Hey, I got this, and I'll go take it." And sometimes, again, like today we talked to Harrison Barnes at practice. Harrison Barnes historically, before last season, he like almost always stepped up. Anytime there's like a bad loss, it's like we get Harrison Barnes and someone else. And he's kind of been phased out of that, of having to take that responsibility. But I also think like there are times where Harrison probably should say, "Hey, I got this one. You guys go ahead." As a vet, like it shouldn't be De'Aaron every time, and it shouldn't be Domas every single time. And that's never what we've asked for. But it should be like we should have somebody who was a player in what happened on the game, during the game, that comes and talks to us. So. All right. I think, I don't, am I missing anything? Did I miss any major topics?
What do you think happens Friday? What do you think happens Friday?
Huh. Brenden, what do you got?
I think it's going to be a really close game, and I have no clue who's going to end up winning. I would lean towards the Kings. I think that, the turnovers will be more clean or less frequent in this next one. That was definitely a big aspect of that game, and hitting shots is going to be important. But I think that Dallas caught them off guard a little bit in some of the ways that they went about things defensively, specifically atypical than they usually play. And I think Sacramento will be more prepared. So I guess I'll give the edge to the Kings a little bit, but I really think this is going to be a close game and kind of a coin flip when we get late.
I got a question that kind of plays into that question. Would you rather, not this coming game, but the game that just happened on Wednesday, would you rather the Kings lost by 36 or lost by 3?
To me, well,
I guess 3.
I think 3 because it would have been a more entertaining brand of basketball. just
sitting
I had
there.
to sit there. Yeah. But yeah, it gives us a little bit more to talk about in terms of hyping up this matchup on Friday for sure. But to me, it was very simple. I mean, like, it didn't have the weight that a 36-point loss earlier in the season did, because you're like, what the hell is this? Like, they just, like, the Kings, I felt, came into that game, and I asked a question to, I think it was Fox, about if he felt like something like this was coming in the second half, because I didn't think they closed out. I didn't think they played well in that second quarter. I mean, they certainly were doing some things decently. I thought, guys like Keon Ellis got off to a good start. But to me, it was all about Domas. Domas was disrupted. I've talked about how anytime he gets disrupted and you take away any of his, his scoring, but his ability to I don't want to say spray the ball, but I guess that's what I'm leaning towards. Him
Spray
basically piling up this, him basically tacking up, rallying, getting all these assists. Okay. When you take his playmaking away, like, this team needs to rely on other guys. And, you thought you were going to see a little bit from the bench. You thought Malik Monk was going to kind of maybe carry the charge a little bit. But it just didn't happen. And I felt like there was a let up. And so one of the things that, while the Kings have been playing well over this 10-game stretch, one thing that's kind of bothered me is not seeing Domantas Sabonis score as much. And I know he's racking up double doubles, but I mean, I had it in front of me before we started the podcast. I was looking at this earlier. Just one 20-point game in the last 5 games. And of those other 4 games, he hasn't even eclipsed. The highest he's had is 14. So he had been playing sensational basketball as we hit March, but over the last really 5 games, like, the scoring is just down. But not only is the scoring down, but the to me, like, I just need to see more activity from him. And I know this guy is a workhorse. I know he's logged a ton of minutes. The minutes have also been a little bit down lately, but I think that they need a lot of Domas, and they need him to be aggressive, and they need for him to score the basketball, especially considering, let's look at the scoring kind of dwindling down. I mean, I know the 36-point game is a bit of an anomaly, but we're talking about, all right, you don't have a Kevin Huerter. Keegan Murray might start off hot for the first half, but where is he in the second half? Obviously, Harrison Barnes doesn't play that type of role, but should he? Should he be a guy who's looking for more shots on his end? The one guy you can sit there and rely on is Domas. He needs to be that guy. So I'm curious to see if Dallas collapses on him a lot, like we've seen a lot of these teams do, and it's worked to their favor, how he responds to that. Because he's getting beat to hell too, by the way. Absolutely smacked around in the face. He's on the ground a lot. He's griping at the officials. So
not good.
See how he goes.
Yeah. Bernie, you have anything to add there?
No, I mean, not really. I mean, I do agree. I think that Dallas was playing their bigs really high up, kind of similar to what you heard about Draymond a lot earlier, right? Of you don't, sure, he's not going to shoot that, and you're willing to live with that shot, but don't let him just sit back there and play make. And I think that Dallas kind of approached that similarly. And Mike Brown was pretty blunt after the game that, when that happens, Domas needs to score. I think, like, mixing in some fake dribble handoffs a little bit here and there could be helpful. Or, he's a guy that you can get past Daniel Gafford, Derek Lively. I know these are long guys, but put one move and try to make something happen. And it doesn't always have to be to score. It can be to make plays for others, which is definitely seems to be his preference there. But I definitely think they could use more aggressiveness from him offensively for sure.
Yeah. And I'll say, I think this is where you miss Kevin Huerter. It's that space that Kevin Huerter provides that, again, Keon is playing extremely well and a very good basketball player, but he's just not able to. He doesn't have the same respect around the league And just that player alone, it does change the dynamic. And then when you add in that Monk hasn't been able to hit a 3 since the All-Star break, you know, I think he's shooting like 29 point something percent from 3 since the All-Star break.
He hasn't
like,
made a 3 in his last 3 games.
Yeah, that's tough. Yeah. I mean, again, some of these guys are wearing out and they need to figure it out. They need to, hopefully this 2-day break here allow them to sort of get their second wind and get ready to finish this thing off. Because if not, they're going to have a tough time holding on and not only not avoiding the play-in, but actually making the playoffs. Like it's crazy.
From that standpoint, though, did you guys come into this 2-game series with the Mavericks? I mean, were you? I didn't expect them to sweep the Mavericks in the season series, even coming into this final 2 games. So whether it was a 3-point loss or a 36-point loss, to your question earlier, the fact that they lost did not surprise me, especially given where they were with the amount of games and just the way that game kind of played out. But I do expect a different, maybe not result, but certainly a different effort and intensity on Friday.
Yeah.
Well, and I will add, PJ Washington hit 4 threes. Tim Hardaway hit 4. Dante Exum hit 2. Like, I know that Luka and Kyrie were going, and you do have to make life more difficult on those guys. But at a certain point when they're doubling, they are making the right plays. But the guys that you're okay living with, at least to an extent, were knocking them down.
Yeah, it felt a lot like the Suns game earlier in the season when all of a sudden Okogie and Nasir Little and Royce O'Neal started hitting threes. And the Kings were doing a tremendous job limiting Booker and limiting KD, but these other guys hit threes. And like, look, I don't know if it's the word is out around the NBA, but I think whatever it is in Sacramento, the sight lines are phenomenal, and players they love shooting in Sacramento, like whatever it is. So I have no idea. We did have like the Draymond Green thing was wild. Watching him foul out, I mean, get tossed from a game in 3 minutes and 36 seconds when they too are up against it and they're trying to fend off a Rockets team that's won 10 in a row. And you see Steph Curry start to get emotional and start to tear up. And of course, Draymond goes out on a podcast and just explains how big of an idiot he is. That, you know, he said what he had to say in front of everybody. And then, you know, he thought that he had turned his back so the official couldn't hear when he called him a whole bunch of names that he shouldn't have called him. Yeah, good for you. Yeah. So
I also thought Steph looked pissed. He looked absolutely furious.
The seats late in the game.
Yeah, that game was pretty much in hand. He just willed them to victory, but it was like, yeah, they went out and got that win. But like in that moment, I mean, you might say teared up. I think he was just beyond pissed off, like
angry.
If someone told me he was pulling his jersey above his head and he was screaming, I would, you know, just screaming frustration. I'd have believed him. The team is wild right now, man. Just
isn't it?
Crazy.
It's wild. Yeah.
Now Clay's back in the starting lineup.
Oh,
probably I mean, honestly, probably the right move.
Well,
yeah.
Just don't love when you're making starting lineup changes healthy this late in the year.
No.
Well, the interesting thing is, I mean, you talk about it. Yeah, Rockets 10 straight. Warriors end up winning 2 straight. Lakers are 5 straight.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone in the West is winning. It's just, you know, if you have a night off, it's like you're hoping and praying somebody loses because you're trying to either hold your ground and just not lose any ground. But yeah, that's going to be interesting to see. I mean, you got literally the Rockets 1 game out of the Warriors, right? I didn't think that was going to happen.
They just beat OKC in overtime last night.
It's wild. Yeah, and look at the Kings standings over the last. I think they've 1-2, lost 1, 1-2, lost 1, 1-2, lost 1, 1-2, lost 1 over their last like 14 games or 13 games.
And that's how you win series.
Yeah, I guess so. So, okay. Do we have any final thoughts? Let's wrap this thing up.
Congrats and credit to Domantas Sabonis for breaking the single season record for consecutive double-doubles.
Oh, the streak you don't believe is a streak?
I'm just saying it's a very specific streak. It's impressive. It is.
Well, it's not the single season one anymore. Now it's the overall
post merger.
Yeah,
I
post merger.
I I guess. What is Wilt's? I'm confused specifically.
I'll tell you this much: he is super glad he doesn't have to talk about that anymore.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, same.
I thought it was a good moment for him.
It was cool, and he deserves credit for his consistency.
And the way he handled that media session afterwards, I mean, he's been talking about it for majority of the season. But the fact that he used that moment, I mean, you could see NBA Entertainment was there. He played the part within that press conference and tried to deflect a little bit. But I thought the moment was not only cool in the arena by his teammates. I thought Mike Brown even acknowledging him and coming over and applauding him was cool and giving him a hug. But yeah, he played the part. I'm glad I think the Kings did a nice job with the video. All that stuff was great. Get to celebrate it and move on. And now you can chase down, what is it, Wilt Chamberlain? Is that
227 games?
Yeah.
Well, I think he holds the official record, the non-post merger record.
Yeah,
right.
He might also be second place.
I would like to see like how many teams were in the league when he retired, when Wilt retired. And I don't think is it like 16? I mean, it's a lot less. The travel was less. They're 1973. How many NBA teams are around in the NBA in 1973? Oh, wow. 16. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 teams. It's different for sure.
You think?
So,
yeah. Little 4-star hotel, 4-star, 5-star travel accommodations. Yeah, it's different.
Wilt had to carry all of his own bags.
One other thing I got is I feel for the Timberwolves because this seems to be a shit show with the ownership selling and apparently now backtracking, with Glenn Taylor trying to say that Mark Lore, Alex A-Rod didn't meet contractual deadlines, but it seems to be very weird and there's a lot going on behind the scenes. Can't help but think, wow, the team's finally good. To this extent, does that play a part? And I just feel like for the better part of a decade, the Kings and Timberwolves were kind of neck and neck in mediocrity. And I appreciated the Timberwolves having a good season. And it's just of course, there has to be some extra shit to it. So I feel for the T-Wolves.
It's on brand.
All right. Sean, you have a war of words too. I mean, Glenn Taylor, who, this is why someone like Kevin Garnett can't go to Target Center and be celebrated, because he absolutely despises that man. And the war of words of them coming out and saying we didn't miss any deadlines. This is buyer's remorse. And I'm kind of inclined to believe him based off of Glenn Taylor's track record. So,
well, and I always believe Alex Rodriguez because he's never lied about anything in his entire life, Sean.
I'll leave that alone.
He's so on the up and up. Talk about an honest man. That's right there is a pillar in the community.
Oh, geez.
I don't even.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll say this too. My final thoughts, though, on a lighter note, my favorite thing I've seen all week thus far, it comes from let's see if we can play a game, because I don't think either of you know this. It comes from a certain former NBA player, Sacramento King, who had an encounter with an animal.
What? There was is it Brad Miller?
First thing that comes to my mind is Hassan Whiteside, but
the Brad Miller one would probably be more on par. Unfortunately, that animal would probably be dead. And this one lived to tell about it. If you folks have not seen this, please do yourself a favor. Go to the Instagram page of one Matt Barnes, who was moving out of his house and encountered a possum in his kitchen, and he sets up this elaborate way to get the possum out. Braver man than me, because I would have probably left the house and called an exterminator or fire department. I don't know what I would have done. I probably would have burned down my house. But what he goes through and shoots it all while live on Instagram, do yourself a favor. It's archived on his with the sound up. It is absolute gold. absolute gold. It is phenomenal.
It is
Kudos
very
to Matt
funny.
Barnes.
I'm Team Possum.
I know you
So-
are. I know you are. But I wasn't gonna go in any of those directions, but I'm telling you, watch
Go,
it.
Possum,
it is
go.
fantastic.
It's huge too. I'm like, oh my God.
Possums are hideous. They're not
Hideous,
friendly.
bro.
They're hideous. They're
Disgusting.
yeah.
It's funny
Yeah.
because people are Matt reposts some of them, but it's like they're sending him, oh, this is my encounter with this possum, and like dead inside of the road. Oh, Matt Barnes got this one. Like, no, this possum, there's a happy ending, but you have to see the commentary. You have to see the lengths that Matt goes to not absolutely. I mean, you could have killed this thing if you wanted to. That didn't happen. So just saying.
All right.
James, I know
great.
your
It is
feelings on
great.
Matt Barnes.
I'm getting a possum hat right now. I'm going on the internet. Team Possum. Okay, let me see. Final thoughts from James. Me and Kyle are having a watch party at Players in Fair Oaks on Saturday
Great
at
bar.
3, from
Great bar.
3 to 6:30. So come out and watch the what is it? It's not what whatever the 8 is, the Elite 8. There we go. So that'll be fun. I don't know. I'm probably gonna have a beer or two. I would assume. I don't know. I haven't been to Players in a long time.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, Brenden, are you going to come out and join us?
I might. Yeah.
All right. We'll have the Brenden Nunes. And what about you, Sean?
When is this again?
Saturday from 3 to 6:30.
This
NCAA
Saturday?
tournament. Yeah.
No chance.
Oh, come on. Come on, Sean. Come
Won't
on,
be
Sean.
there.
So any of
Usually
you
I
guys
do the
out
Larry
there?
David. Usually I do the Larry David.
That
Oh
might
yeah, I'd
be
love to. When
fun.
is it?
I think I
at
have something else
6:30?
planned. No.
I can't be a little later. No, I can't make it. I can't make it. No,
Can't have a
Oh,
long
yeah.
day.
I'm
Definitely can't
gonna
make it.
protest. Look at Brennan. He just lied. I'm gonna protest because you end up doing this meet and greet with at Players. and
Somebody
we're still
else set
waiting
it up.
to
I
do
didn't
our-
set it up. I don't know. Do you know what my
Wait a minute. This is bullshit.
Let's
that's what
talk
I'm
about
saying.
James'
I'm
day.
protesting. Oh, great bar, but I'm booing.
I had
Don't show
I had to
off.
get up early. I had a show all day. Then I got out of my show. I sped down to meet
Yeah,
with
you
you
did.
guys at King's practice. I left there, went straight to physical therapy for my shoulder. Left there, got straight here by 3 o'clock so we could do this podcast. Come on now. I don't have any spare time. I need somebody to set up the Off the Record with the Kings Beat virtual happy hour. No, not virtual, in-person happy hour.
Yep, sure do.
maybe when I'm at Players, I'll talk to somebody there. But
Talk to
I
Jeff.
don't-
Jeff is the owner of Players. Fantastic guy. Hopefully he's there. Big Kings
Sounds
fan.
like you should talk to Jeff.
Well, I
yeah,
don't.
see,
What the hell?
or one of the other haunts that you're at every single night.
No, because those are. I got to keep my regular haunts out of the.
Oh,
Out of
you
the-
don't
out of
want
the mix.
to mix so people don't know
Yeah.
who you are. Don't you know who
That's
I
fine.
am? That's
Look for
right.
the
There's
Hurley hat.
Sean. All right, there you go.
Yeah,
The guy in the Hurley
I'm
hat.
easy
You
to
know
find.
that guy. You mean
that
Sean
guy.
Cunningham from Fox
I have
40?
I have a T-shirt that says that guy. I'm that guy.
You're that guy. All right.
I'm that guy. And a
Okay.
separate.
Final thoughts. That was my final thoughts. Everyone come out and see me and Kyle Saturday, and then maybe we'll scout that place, and maybe it'll be a good spot. I don't know. I haven't been there.
Tremendous.
I haven't been there in like decades.
You doing
I
Players
don't
1 or Players 2? Players 1 is the one on Fair Oaks, and then Players 2 is the one with all the pool tables and shuffleboard, all the games. That's up at you just go up the hill on Fair Oaks Boulevard a little bit. So Sunrise is Players 1. Fair Oaks, which is right off of Sunrise and Fair Oaks, is Players 2.
We were told it was Fair Oaks. That's where we're going. So I don't
So then
know.
that's Players 2. Yeah.
All right. That's where I'll be.
Players
Hopefully.
1 has the restaurant though, but you can still
Okay.
order food from Players 2 and they bring it up to you.
Oh, okay. I will have a more like defined where I'm going to be. How about that?
That
All right.
sounds good.
That's going to do it for this edition of the KINGSBEAT podcast. Make sure to jump on board with the KINGSBEAT. Go to thekingsbeat.com and become a premium subscriber. Give us a thumbs up here on the channel. Subscribe to the channel. Hey, there goes the thumbs up. It just
Did it?
happened. Yep. Make sure to, on top of all of that, go check out the great work that Sean is doing over at Fox 40. Give Brenden a listen on the King's Pulse podcast and wherever else Brenden does his incredible work. And tune in to me and Kyle from 10 to noon on ESPN 1320 Monday through Friday for all of this information, like in a different format. So thanks for tuning in to the KINGSBEAT podcast. For Box 40, Sean Cunningham and Brenden Nunes from the King's Pulse podcast, I am James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the KINGSBEAT. See you soon.